Washington buzzed with anticipation. The CNN studio was unusually tense, not because of a scandal or global emergency, but because Karoline Leavitt had just stepped into the lion's den. She had been invited to appear on State of the Union, hosted by Kasie Hunt, and everyone backstage knew this wouldn't be a soft exchange. Karoline wasn't the type to bite her tongue. And Kasie? She had a reputation for keeping control, no matter the guest. As cameras rolled and makeup was barely set, the control room already felt on edge. Producers murmured into earpieces, studio lights flared, and Twitter awaited the clash like a modern coliseum. Joining me now is Karoline Leavitt, National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign, Kasie announced, voice steady but with an undertone of steel. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Karoline, poised in a cobalt blue blazer that mirrored her defiance, nodded once, eyes fixed on Kasie. "Thanks for having me," she said, her tone neutral but tight, as if she were loading ammunition behind each word. Kasie didn't waste time with niceties. "Let's get right to it," she said. "Do you honestly think the American people trust someone who, let's be honest, has defended some of the most controversial moments of the Trump era?" Karoline didn't blink. "I think the American people are tired of the media spinning every word into a weapon," she snapped. "And frankly, they're tired of being lectured by journalists who pretend to be neutral while sitting in judgment." The silence that followed was brief, but heavy. Kasie leaned in, her smile sharpening. "That's rich, coming from someone who parrots talking points like a press release in heels." That was it. Karoline's expression hardened, but she didn't raise her voice. "You just proved my point," she said flatly. "It's not journalism anymore. It's theater, and you're playing a role." The control room froze. One of the producers whispered, "Cut her off." Another replied, "Don't you dare." But on set, Kasie's hand subtly motioned off camera. Karoline noticed. "You going to pull the mic now?" she said calmly. "Go ahead, prove me right." Kasie didn't respond. But seconds later, the feed crackled, and Karoline's voice cut for the live stream, only briefly, but just long enough to spark chaos on social media. Viewers saw it. Twitter exploded. #cut her mic. #Karoline vs. Kasie. #media bias exposed. And Karoline, still sitting in the chair, lips tight, eyes blazing, knew exactly what just happened. She hadn't lost. She had started something. The moment Karoline Leavitt's mic cut out, the energy in the studio snapped. Kasie Hunt maintained her composed posture, but behind her polished demeanor was a flicker of realization. This had just spiraled into something much bigger than a 5-minute interview segment. In the control room, producers scrambled to assess the damage. "Is her feedback?" one asked. "Get her audio clean, now." But on social media, the narrative had already slipped out of CNN's hands. Clips of Karoline's final words before the cut, "It's not journalism anymore. It's theater," circulated like wildfire. Memes. TikToks. Twitter threads dissecting Kasie's facial expressions. Hashtags trending by the second. Back in the studio, the broadcast returned to Kasie, solo. She continued the segment as if nothing had happened, shifting to another topic. But the absence of Karoline was glaring. Viewers noticed. The silence was louder than anything Kasie could say. Off-air, Karoline remained seated, arms crossed, refusing to be escorted out like a casualty. "So that's how you do it now," she said to a nearby staffer. "Cut the mic when the answers don't fit your script?" The staffer mumbled something about technical difficulties. Karoline stood. "Right. Technical censorship." Kasie exited the set minutes later, heels clicking sharply against the tile. When she saw Karoline still standing by the exit, the moment was inevitable. "You got your soundbite," Kasie said without making eye contact. "No," Karoline replied, "you gave it to me." Kasie turned. "You came here looking for a fight, not a conversation." Karoline shrugged. "I came here with answers. You brought the scissors." Their eyes locked, one hardened by experience in traditional media, the other sharpened by years of culture war combat. Neither blinked. "You can't win public trust by playing martyr," Kasie said, voice lower now. Karoline stepped closer. "And you can't keep pretending to be impartial when you wield silence like a weapon." For a brief moment, there was no tension, just recognition. Two women who knew the game too well. One guarded her institution, the other defied it. Then a producer interrupted, "Both of you, statements are being requested. We need quotes before this thing explodes further." Karoline turned away first. "Tell them I'm not the one who walked away from the conversation." And with that, she left the studio, her phone already vibrating non-stop. Campaign staff, supporters, even detractors. The mic had been cut, but her message hadn't been silenced. It had been amplified. By noon that same day, cable networks, political podcasts, and morning talk shows had all seized on the drama now dubbed the mic cut incident. Clips were playing on loop, each outlet spinning the narrative through their lens. Conservative media lit up. Fox News flashed a cheerin'. CNN silences Karoline Leavitt, fear of the truth. On the other side, MSNBC posed a different question. Was Karoline grandstanding or gaslighting? Karoline's phone was blowing up. Her inbox had hundreds of emails, from supporters, campaign strategists, and angry viewers demanding a full response. A quick team meeting was called in a nearby cafe, away from the CNN building, but within range of cameras eager to catch a follow-up. "They tried to frame this like you were disruptive," said one aide, showing her a tweet from a senior CNN producer claiming Karoline had refused to stay on topic. Karoline didn't flinch. "If on topic means parroting their script, then yeah, I definitely didn't." One advisor chimed in, "We can flip this. Right now, you're the one trending. Kasie Hunt looks like the censor." Karoline paused for a moment, then looked straight at the advisor. "Good. But I don't want to just trend. I want to expose how deep this goes." Meanwhile, Kasie was meeting with CNN's legal and PR teams. Her face was calm but stern. "We need to get ahead of this," she said. A junior producer suggested doing a follow-up segment to clarify what happened. Kasie shook her head. "We clarify, we admit guilt. We ignore it, they shape the narrative." But the damage had already been done. Viewers had seen the exchange. They saw Karoline's mic cut after her sharpest rebuttal. They saw Kasie continue, unfazed. That silence wasn't just a technical glitch, it had become a metaphor. Even late-night shows jumped in. Jimmy Fallon joked. Karoline Leavitt got her mic cut on CNN, probably for trying to use facts. Stephen Colbert countered with, "Karoline talked like she was auditioning for a Fox Nation thriller titled Silenced by Truth." But comedy aside, the public wasn't laughing. Petitions circulated demanding CNN issue an apology. Others demanded Karoline be banned from national airtime. Karoline, of course, didn't back down. That night, she posted a video to X. She didn't use flashy edits or music, just her, facing the camera. "I sat across from someone who thought they could control the narrative by controlling the volume," she began. But truth isn't measured in decibels. It echoes. The video hit 1 million views in an hour. CNN didn't comment. And Kasie? She watched the clip in silence from her office, eyes narrowing, not in regret, but in anticipation. Because Karoline had just turned a moment into a movement. And the next time they crossed paths, it wouldn't be in a studio. 2 days after the now infamous interview, the tension spilled out of studios and into the halls of Capitol Hill. What began as a clash between a press secretary and a mainstream anchor had evolved into a political litmus test. Lawmakers, journalists, and even presidential hopefuls were being asked, did CNN go too far? Was Karoline Leavitt silenced, or grandstanding? Karoline, for her part, wasn't just riding the wave, she was steering it. She'd already booked appearances on Newsmax, The Daily Wire, and even agreed to a sit-down with Megyn Kelly. Every conversation circled back to a single point. When a network cuts your mic, they're not muting just you. They're muting every voter who thinks like you. In a closed-door fundraiser in Florida, Karoline doubled down. We don't fear their microphones, she told the crowd. Because we don't need theirs. We've built our own. Applause. Standing ovation. Meanwhile, Kasie Hunt returned to the air with a measured statement. Our job, she said, is to keep interviews focused, factual, and civil. When conversations derail into performance, we have to make tough calls. She never said Karoline's name, but everyone knew who she meant. That night, Karoline posted a one-line tweet. You can't cut what's already viral. The fire didn't die down. In fact, it spread. House Republicans took the floor to denounce corporate media manipulation. Senate Democrats pushed back, calling it manufactured outrage. Then came the moment no one expected. Senator Josh Hawley submitted a resolution demanding the Senate Committee on Commerce investigate political discrimination in broadcast media. It was symbolic, but explosive. CNN's top brass met in private to manage the fallout. Some pushed for a formal explanation. Others, including Kasie, resisted. She knows what she's doing, a senior producer told the room. She weaponized a mic cut into martyrdom. And she's winning, someone else whispered. Meanwhile, Karoline wasn't done. She planned her next move, a live town hall titled Unmuted, What They Won't Let You Say. Tickets sold out in an hour. Conservative influencers shared it. Moderates tuned in. Even liberal bloggers admitted, she knows how to play the moment. At the center of it all, one phrase became a rallying cry, plastered on signs, shirts, and streams. Cut the mic, cut the mask. Karoline didn't ask for the fight. But now that it was here, she wasn't backing down. And Kasie? She was already preparing for what would come next. Because the next time their paths crossed, there wouldn't be a mute button. The stage was set at George Washington University's packed auditorium for a nationally televised panel titled Truth and Trust in Media. Organizers had billed it as a bipartisan conversation. But everyone knew why tickets had sold out in under 30 minutes. Karoline Leavitt and Kasie Hunt were both on the docket. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. It wasn't just students and press, it was political staffers, media watchdogs, and influencers live streaming every second. The air practically sizzled with the weight of what might go wrong, or very right. Backstage, Kasie reviewed her notes. She wasn't nervous, she was prepared. She'd faced senators, CEOs, crisis spokespeople. But this was personal now. Karoline had turned a moment into a movement, and that movement was headed straight toward her chair on stage. On the other side of the curtain, Karoline adjusted her blazer. Her team had wanted something flashy. She'd gone simple, bold, and sharp. I'm not here to trend, she told them, echoing the line that had gone viral. I'm here to strike a nerve. The moderator, a respected veteran anchor, opened with softball intros, easing the crowd in. Then came the inevitable. Let's talk about that CNN segment, the moderator said, eyes shifting between Kasie and Karoline. That moment has sparked an entire national dialogue. Kasie didn't flinch. It did. Because it revealed how much distrust already exists. I didn't create that. I just became a lightning rod for it. Karoline's turn. She leaned forward. No, you didn't create it. You just confirmed it. For millions of Americans watching, the moment that mic cut, it was the system exposing itself. The audience murmured. A few gasps. Several phones now held high. Kasie's tone sharpened. You weren't silenced. You were off-topic and deliberately disruptive. I was off-narrative, Karoline snapped. That's your real issue. Now the gloves were off. Disagreement doesn't equal censorship, Kasie said. Tell that to the mute button, Karoline shot back. The moderator tried to steer the conversation back, but the moment had already cemented itself. This wasn't just a clash of ideologies. It was the embodiment of two Americas, one rooted in establishment journalism, the other in insurgent media rebellion. What neither of them knew was that clip, Karoline's sharp delivery and Kasie's frosty rebuttal, would hit 10 million views by the end of the night. What started as a broken mic had become a full-blown cultural war, with two women unwilling to blink. And the nation? It was watching. By morning, the headlines had written themselves. Leavitt versus Hunt, the moment the mic war turned real. Kasie's composure versus Karoline's fire. Two women, one stage, no backing down. Pundits across the spectrum had already taken sides. Conservative commentators hailed Karoline's performance as raw, unfiltered American grit. Liberal voices praised Kasie's restraint, arguing that professionalism won the day. But something deeper had shifted. The exchange wasn't just about two personalities anymore, it had become a symbolic litmus test. Were you with the system? Or against it? Did you believe decorum preserved democracy, or that disruption revealed truth? Karoline, for her part, doubled down. She posted a clipped version of the exchange, highlighting the exact moment she said, "Tell that to the mute button." It exploded online. 3.4 million views. Hashtag muted but not broken began trending. T-shirts appeared overnight. Meanwhile, Kasie Hunt kept quiet, publicly. But in editorial meetings at CNN, she pushed for an entire segment exploring how distrust in institutions is fueling political tribalism. It was a clean, intellectual response. But it didn't trend. Karoline was already ahead of the next narrative cycle. She flew to Ohio for a campaign rally supporting a young populist candidate. Her speech didn't mention Kasie by name, but the digs were unmistakable. They want polished. We'll take real. They want filters. We've got fire. You're not supposed to challenge the press. That's why we do. In D.C., Kasie appeared on PBS, framing the issue in more global terms. When the press becomes the story, democracy suffers. It was thoughtful, sharp, even respected. But it couldn't compete with viral. Political strategists took note. She's turning this into a Trump-style movement, minus the chaos, one advisor said, reviewing Karoline's metrics. But she's losing moderates, a CNN editor pushed back. People respect facts. People want a fight, the advisor replied. And she gave them one. The pressure on both women was mounting, but in different ways. Karoline thrived in chaos. She treated turbulence like oxygen. But her team was exhausted, trying to keep pace with her media schedule. Kasie, on the other hand, felt the weight of professionalism. Every word was calculated. Every public move had to feel earned, not impulsive. She couldn't afford a misstep, because unlike Karoline, she had a network's reputation tied to her image. And then came the leak. An anonymous source at CNN claimed the original interview had been edited before air. Kasie's team trimmed sections for pacing. But one part, where Karoline made a solid point about media bias, was cut entirely. It blew up like wildfire. Suddenly, the story wasn't about interruption, it was about intent. Was Karoline silenced, or censored? The stage was no longer just public opinion. It was now a battleground for truth itself. And neither woman planned to surrender. Within hours of the leak, Karoline's team seized the narrative like a hawk. A bold tweet with just 3 words hit her feed. They edited truth. Attached was a screenshot of the alleged cut from the CNN interview logs, uncorroborated, but explosive. The conservative ecosystem latched on instantly. Fox anchors opened with the leak. Podcasters dropped emergency episodes. Even Elon Musk commented, quote-tweeting with a fire emoji and the word predictable. CNN's PR team scrambled. Officially, they denied any wrongdoing. All edits were made for time, not content, the network stated. But privately, senior producers were livid. One insider told Politico, this wasn't censorship, it was structure. But now, thanks to that one line, we're painted as gatekeepers of speech. Meanwhile, Kasie Hunt was caught in the crosshairs. She had nothing to do with the edit, technically, but it didn't matter. Her name was now tangled in a digital wildfire. On Reddit, conspiracy threads bloomed. TikTok creators ran breakdowns of her body language. Her interviews were slowed down, rescored with dramatic music, turned into memes. Kasie kept quiet, but the silence hurt her. And Karoline? She wasn't backing off. She appeared on a live stream titled "Edited Out, What They Don't Want You to Hear." No teleprompters. No makeup artists. Just her, a mic, and a mission. "This isn't about me," she told 3 million live viewers. "It's about what happens when the truth makes them uncomfortable." The phrase spread like a virus. A growing number of independent journalists, both right and left, began to echo her frustration. "Legacy media is losing grip," one Substack writer posted. And Karoline Leavitt just pulled a thread they can't restitch. But not everyone was on her side. Kasie's supporters rallied too. High-profile journalists issued statements of solidarity. "Editing for clarity isn't censorship," NPR's media correspondent tweeted. "It's standard." MSNBC did a sympathetic segment on Kasie's integrity under fire. Still, Karoline had the momentum, and now she was planning her next strike. She scheduled a press conference outside CNN's headquarters in New York. She called it the Transparency Tour. The goal? To demand mainstream outlets release full, uncut interviews as public record. "If they want to fact-check us," she said, "they better start by fact-checking themselves." Behind the scenes, Kasie debated going to that press conference. Her team was split. Some urged her to show up, to reclaim the narrative. Others warned it would only fuel Karoline's spectacle. But Kasie had made up her mind. If Karoline wanted a stage, she'd get one. And this time, both mics would stay on. It was raining in Midtown Manhattan, but that didn't stop a crowd from forming outside the CNN building. By the time Karoline Leavitt stepped up to the temporary podium, umbrellas dotted the plaza like protest flags. Cameras rolled. Reporters jostled. Live feeds lit up across platforms. The hashtag Transparency Tour was trending worldwide. Karoline's voice cut through the storm. "If media wants our trust, it starts with honesty. Full tapes. Full context. Full truth." Behind her, a large screen displayed the headline. "No more cuts." But the real shock came 10 minutes in. As Karoline listed recent examples of manipulated narratives, a black town car pulled up to the curb. From it emerged Kasie Hunt, trench coat on, expression unreadable. She walked directly toward the podium. A ripple ran through the crowd. Gasps. Whispers. Phones rose in unison. Karoline saw her approach. She didn't flinch. But her eyes narrowed, and her tone cooled. Kasie stopped at the edge of the platform. "I'd like to respond." Karoline raised an eyebrow. "This is public space," she said. "Go ahead." A producer handed Kasie a second microphone. Live news alerts began flashing. Hunt and Leavitt, live on stage. Kasie took a breath. "I'm not here to apologize for edits I didn't make. I'm here to tell the truth. And the truth is, cutting for clarity isn't censorship. It's responsibility." Karoline stepped forward. "You call it clarity. I call it control. What gets aired, what gets buried? Who speaks, who's silenced?" Kasie countered, steady. "You're not silenced. You've got millions of followers and a merchandise line." Laughter. Applause. But Karoline didn't back down. "Then why does it bother you that I'm heard?" Silence. Kasie shifted. "Because shouting over others isn't bravery. It's branding." The tension was electric. No moderator. No script. Just two women locked in ideological warfare under blinking red lights. Karoline turned toward the cameras. If you're tired of media gatekeeping your truth, look around. You're not alone. Kasie turned as well. And if you still believe in fact over fury, hold the line. Don't let outrage become your compass. It wasn't a debate. It was a duel. By the end, no one could say who'd won. But everyone knew something had changed. This wasn't just politics. It was a new kind of power struggle, where narrative was everything, and every mic was a sword. The next morning, both women woke up to chaos, different kinds. For Karoline Leavitt, her inbox was overflowing with media requests, merch partners, and grassroots PACs wanting to ride the wave. "You've turned a mic drop moment into a movement," one strategist texted. But as she sat alone, scrolling through the hashtags, something gnawed at her. When did I stop hearing and start just performing? Her team pushed her to launch Phase 2 of the Transparency Tour, 5 cities in 7 days. But Karoline wasn't sure. The energy was addicting. The message was real. But the game was getting ugly. Meanwhile, at CNN, Kasie Hunt was summoned to a closed-door meeting. "You ambushed a narrative on live air," one senior exec said. "You walked into a setup," another warned. She sat in silence. She knew the truth: she wasn't protecting the network anymore, she was protecting herself. And it was getting harder. Outside the buildings, outside the broadcasts, the public split hard. Karoline's followers posted screenshots of Kasie's on-air hesitations, labeling her corporate media personified. Kasie's defenders mocked Karoline as a political influencer in patriot cosplay. But what few people saw, off-camera, was this. They both were tired. Karoline, of being told she was just angry youth wrapped in lipstick. Kasie, of being told she was just establishment in a pantsuit. That night, Karoline recorded a private voice memo, never released. "I didn't come to tear anyone down. But I'm not gonna be quiet when people like me are treated like props, or threats." And Kasie? She wrote a draft column she never submitted. "We say we want truth, but what we really want is noise that sounds like truth." Then came the twist. A young journalism student, unknown, independent, released a YouTube breakdown titled, "What Karoline and Kasie Taught Us by Colliding." It wasn't partisan. It wasn't hostile. It was honest. She explored how two women, from opposite sides of a broken system, had become symbols, when maybe they were just people trying to speak without being drowned. The video gained traction. Comments poured in. "First thing I've seen all week that didn't make me more angry. Respect to both of them. Even if I disagree." For the first time, the echo chamber cracked. Not broken, but bent. 2 weeks passed. No new tweets. No press stunts. No interviews. Karoline Leavitt went quiet. Her team begged her to ride the momentum. "We can turn this into a PAC, maybe even a tour," one said. But she'd pulled back, way back. Instead, she spent her days in a cabin upstate, writing in longhand, rereading the words she once barked into microphones. She wasn't retreating. She was reloading. "The next time I speak," she whispered to herself, "it'll be on my terms. Not theirs." Back in D.C., Kasie Hunt returned to her desk at CNN, but not to anchor. She stepped behind the camera. Producing. Scripting. Watching. Something had shifted in her, too. She declined a book deal. Turned down a podcast offer. And instead pitched a new segment series. Across the Divide. Real conversations. No edits. No commercial breaks. The pitch was greenlit. Barely. And in the first episode, she interviewed the journalism student who'd gone viral. Not Karoline. Not a senator. A 22-year-old kid who just asked better questions than most adults. You changed the conversation, Kasie told her on air. No, the student replied. Karoline, and you did. I just slowed it down. The broadcast hit a nerve. In the weeks that followed, a quiet movement began. Clips of real debate, not yelling matches, circulated online. People across the aisle followed each other again. Misinformation still raged, but a sliver of space opened up, room to breathe. And then, one foggy morning in early spring, Karoline walked onto a small college stage in Vermont. No podium. No team. Just folding chairs and students with notebooks. She didn't come to perform. She came to talk. Somewhere along the way, I became addicted to being right, she said. But I forgot that being understood is sometimes more powerful. A student raised his hand. Do you regret the fight? She paused. No. But I regret how loud I had to get just to be heard. The room was still. Far away, in a CNN studio, Kasie was editing her next segment. She looked up at the screen as her producer asked, "Should we cut this part for time?" Kasie shook her head. No, leave it in. 2 women, 2 mics. 2 journeys. Once enemies on stage, now echoes in a larger conversation. The noise had faded, but the questions remained. In a world obsessed with headlines, sometimes the loudest voices drown out the truth. But every now and then, 2 people collide, not just to fight, but to reveal something deeper. This wasn't just about politics. It was about power, pride, and the cost of being heard. Kasie Hunt tried to silence Karoline Leavitt with a switch. Karoline answered with a spotlight. And in the middle of the noise, a question remains. Are we still listening? Or are we just waiting for our turn to speak? Because the real mic drop? That's when the conversation keeps going, long after the cameras cut.